Daf Yomi, tracking Batra, 63b, top of the page, with the words Lamai Hilchasa. Lamai Hilchasa, Rav Zvid Amar, She'im Ratzal Hoitzi Ba Zizin Motzi, Rav Papa Amar, She'im Ratzal Livnos Aliyah Al Gaba Bone. With regard to what halacha did Rish Lakish say this? In any case, the upper story is his, as when he sold the house, it was only the lower story that he sold to the buyer. Rav Zvid says, he said this to teach the halacha that if the seller wishes to extend from the upper story projections over the courtyard, which was included in the sale, he may extend them. Rav Papa says, he said this to teach the halacha that if his upper story collapses and the seller wishes to build an upper story on top of it to replace it, he may build it. The Gemara asks, granted according to Zvid, this explanation is consistent with that which Rish Lakish teaches, which begins with, that is to say, as according to Zvid, Rish Lakish infers from the ruling of the Batra about tithes that even though the seller of the house did not explicitly withhold anything from himself, the court interprets his use of his superfluous stipulation as an indication that he wished to withhold for himself the space over the courtyard for the projections. But according to Rav Papa, what did Reish Lakish mean when he said his statement that begins with the phrase, that is to say? The seller's right to rebuild the upper story after it collapses is not derived from the superfluous stipulation that he attached to the transaction, and it is not inferred from the Braita. The Gemara concludes, indeed, Rav Papa's interpretation is difficult, as it does not account for the wording of Reish Lakish's statement. Amar Rav Dimi menado ahayman de mizaven le beisel chavre al gam de kosav le umka varuma tzarech liftav le kani lach mitohom ara viad rum rikiha. The Gemara discusses what is included in the wordings of various contracts. Timi from Nerdah said, concerning this one who sells a house to another, wants the sale to include the entire property, even if he writes for the buyer in the bill of sale, I'm selling you the depth and the height, umka varuma, the depth and the height of the house. He must also write for him, acquire for yourself the property from the depth of the earth up to the height of the sky. Kani lach mitahom ara be'ad rum rikia. What is the reason for this? The reason is that the buyer does not require the depth and the height of the property without explicit specification, and therefore, unless the matter has been explicitly stipulated, the buyer may not dig under the house or build above it. The words and the reason, acquire for yourself the property of depth of the earth and the height of the sky. Was the reason for this? The reason is the buyer does not acquire the depth and the height of the property without explicit specification. Therefore, unless the matter has been explicitly stipulated, the buyer may not dig under the house or build above it. The words the depth and the height affect the acquisition of the depth and the height of the house for the buyer, allowing him to dig below or build above the house, and the additional phrase from the depth of the earth up to the height of the sky affects the acquisition of the pit and the cistern and the tunnels associated with the house. Leima misayale, v'lo es habor, v'lo es hadus. Alpha pisha kosovlo, umka v'duma. Yisal kadai tek v'stom, v'kani umka v'ruma. V'hani umka v'ruma. Lemikne bor v'dus u'mechinos. The more proposes, let us say, the Mishnah in 64a supports Rav Dimi's opinion. One who sells a house has sold neither the pit nor the cistern, even if he writes for the buyer in the bill of sale that he is selling him the depth and the height of the house, as if it enters your mind to say, and the buyer acquires the depth and the height of the house even without the specification that the depth and the height of the house are included in the sale. Let the phrase the depth and the height affect the acquisition of the pit and the cistern and the tunnels, as he attached an additional stipulation to the transaction. The Gemara rejects this opinion. The Mishnah is referring to a case where the seller did not write these words for him. V'ha afal pi shekasav katani hachikamer afal pi shelo kasav lo kemi shekasav dami lemikne umkavaruma lemikne barvadus chinos ikasav la umkavaruma kani v'ila kasav lo kani. Okay, the Gemara asks, but this line of reasoning is difficult, as the Mishnah explicitly teaches that the pit of the cistern and the cistern are not sold, even if the seller writes for the buyer that he is selling him the depth and the height of the house. The Gemara answers that this is what the Mishnah is saying. Even though the seller did not write these words for him in the bill of sale for the purpose of acquiring the depth and the height of the house, it is considered as if he wrote them, as it is assumed that they were omitted by accident. By contrast, for the purpose of acquiring the pit and the cistern and the animals, if the seller explicitly wrote for him the words the depth and the height, the buyer acquires them. But if he did not write that phrase in the bill of sale, the buyer does not acquire them. No proof can be derived from this Mishnah. Tashma, come in here. Lo esagag bisman sheyesh lo ma'akag gavoa. As we're talking, come in here. Was taught in the Mishnah 61a. One who sells his house without explicitly stating what is included in the sale has not sold the roof along with the house when it has a parapet handbreds high. Such a roof is considered a separate entity and is not included in the sale of the house.